Okay, well, we'll get started. So I want to welcome everybody to the second On the Road to the Summit 2023 webinar series. My name is Lindsay Alaban, and I am a rural development specialist and longtime SEDA member. So we appreciate the support of the SEDA members and partners that have joined us today. And with respect and gratitude, I want to acknowledge that SEDA serves treaties 2, 4, 5, 6, 8, and 10 territories, and the traditional homeland of the Métis. With the provincial summit coming up in October, this is an opportunity to start engaging in conversations around common challenges and learn from the efforts of others. Please visit www.saskleaders.com for summit agenda and to take advantage of the last early registration discount, which ends on August 16th. The summit's always a really great time, so I hope if you haven't registered already, you can make that happen because it's such a nice time to join and meet up with everyone that's working on the same projects as us within the province. So a few housekeeping items. We ask that the audience stay muted until it's time for the question and answers. Submit questions at any time in the chat, and we will collect them and address them after our presentations today. Feel free to wait until the end of discussion and raise your hand to chat directly with our special guests. And the webinar will be recorded and made available to attendees following this event. All right, so I want to introduce our guests. So first off, we have Janine Hart. She is the Executive Director of the Humboldt Regional Newcomer Welcome Center. For the past 14 years, Janine has worked with immigrant and refugees newcomers, increasing capacity to support employers, communities, and stakeholders across the region to be inclusive and equitable. After immigrating to Canada as a temporary foreign worker with her husband and 5 children, Janine soon realized that living in a small rural community, she would need to utilize her transferable skills and began her journey in the settlement sector. So welcome, Janine. We also, the second presenter is CEO Dirk Propp, launched Immigrate in late 2017 after working for over a decade as an immigration consultant, where he learned firsthand how time-consuming, confusing, and stressful the immigration process was for applicants and the companies seeking them alike. Through Immigrate, Dirk Propp hopes to provide the answer to this problem. Based in Saskatoon, Immigrate connects qualified candidates from around the world to Canadian companies seeking skilled workers. So with that, I think, did we have a specific person who was going to go first? Janine, did you want to go first?
Hi, Lindsay, and welcome everybody. Looking at the questions, the first question actually I was going to hand over to Dirk. I don't know if we just want to kind of bounce off each other. I don't know how you and Jessica kind of want this to go.
Yeah, that's perfectly fine, Janine, for sure.
Yeah.
Which question were you attracted to?
So should I read the question first, or does everybody have the question?
I can read the questions. I wasn't sure if you guys have presentations first, but if we want to just
Okay. Well, yeah.
Perfect.
So
I can read the questions for sure. So first question is, we are observing that rural businesses may be hesitant to hire for foreign workers. Is it a language skills process? What are the observations, experience of the panelists, and any suggestion to counter this?
Well, yeah, I guess I can go on this one. I will say firsthand, I am not an expert on visual presentations. I don't do well on the camera like many of us, but I'll go on this. I can only speak to the region that we serve, Lindsay, and that is Humboldt and some very rural communities. So we tend to work right up into Nipawin now with our local immigration partnership, but predominantly around a 200-kilometer radius around Humboldt itself. So from my experience and my staffing's experience, we really haven't seen any hesitance of employers hiring foreign workers. When I was reading the question and I'm thinking more about it, what we do see is that foreign workers are being hired to fill the labor shortages. So are they being hired in positions that reflect their professional qualifications and experience? Or are they being hired where the needs are? I would go to the latter. We do see many foreign workers who are highly qualified being hired in entry-level positions, and then the ability to move up from those entry-level positions is very hard. But when we look at languages, entering into a position, the Canadian language benchmark is there, and employees who are hired have definitely met that Canadian language benchmark. Skills-wise, the skills are definitely there. Quite often we're overskilled, and the process is laborious. So from an employee, from a newcomer's perspective, we certainly haven't seen any hesitance within our region, and I can't speak outside of our region. Dirk?
Yeah, so I don't think businesses in rural communities are hesitant to hire foreign workers so much as the fact that in a lot of rural communities, it's seasonality, and the process to hire foreign workers is a long time. So a lot of businesses are coming out of the pandemic, where pre-pandemic there was a lot of foreign workers in Canada, and you can always find somebody. There's always somebody available to work, whether it was an international student or somebody would come in to work. Since the pandemic, the Canadian government really allowed everybody to become permanent residents in Canada that was here as a foreign worker that had English language ability. So most of those people were wiped out with the express entry pool where they cleaned it out, or the TR to PR program. So a lot of those people, they got permanent residence now, which is where you're seeing the most permanent residents ever in Canada. And what we're finding is that there's not a lot of temporary foreign workers here right now. So when there's that big, massive gap of not a lot of people here, plus a generational labor shortage with a lot of people retiring, there's a gap. And a lot of the foreign workers, they want to go to major city centers, less so much the rural communities. So they're looking to come to the major city centers first. Whereas the rural communities are really where a lot of the opportunities are for the foreign workers. But the federal government's also made it pretty easy to switch jobs and switch employers now, which plays against the favor of the rural communities. When it's easy enough to apply for work from inside Canada, change your employer inside Canada, when the employers in these rural communities spend a lot of the money, spend a lot of the time waiting for these people to get here, just to eventually lose them because the government made it too easy to change. So that's something that needs to be fixed. Understandably, it's part of what's driving the movement for the workers, which is great. But the employers are often getting taken advantage of, especially in rural towns, when they lose the people that they spend a lot of money to bring over.
Great points. Thanks, guys. I'll move to the next question. Some of our members have commented on the small storefronts that are being purchased by newcomers. They appear to be legitimate businesses, then they disappear after a few months, which leaves a negative impression within the community. Can you tell us about the immigration program practice as it relates to this occurrence? Is real estate industry playing a role, and if so, how?
Janine, do you want to go? Do you want to take this one, or should I try to dive into it?
Yeah, this was the one I was going to say. I think you may have more input on this.
All right, so this is a difficult question for sure. So I did kind of script this one out here, so then I'll go off script afterwards. But I think what you have to really look at is the journey from the beginning, right? You got to put yourself in that immigrant's shoes. That they're choosing to immigrate and leave their home, their friends, and their family behind. And they have a lot of choices in the world, as well as a lot of choices in Canada. So, they're uprooting themselves and their family and the way of life that they're used to make a big decision to move to a different place, great place in the summer, little cold in the winter. But they're making that choice to actually move them and their family to a different place, and hoping that they're welcomed into the community that they're going to. So I think that it's a massive decision for them, which can't be easy. So when people pick Saskatchewan, it's fantastic, and we should really embrace them and welcome these people as they they can contribute to our economy, and really we hope that they contribute to the community that they're coming into as well. As per the immigration process, I figured I'd go into that part first, because that's the big thing is, we have to remember that people are people, and we got to remember that, their heart's in the right place, that they're trying to come here and change their life for whatever reason it is. But the business immigration process is long, and it can be difficult. It involves oftentimes a visit to the province, to come out here for 10 days, create a business establishment plan of what business that they plan to establish when they come here. And understanding that they believe that it'll work, and that their investment is going to be successful, because they are investing a lot of money, a lot of time in this. Then they often have an interview with the government, as well as the government deep dives into the financial capacity of the applicants. So it is a little bit intrusive, so to speak, but it also is, it's pretty thorough as well. But really what happens is the process can take up to a year before a person can actually arrive. And what you're seeing is that oftentimes, when a person comes to visit, it might be summer 2023. And by the time they actually get here, it might be summer 2024. And a lot of stuff can change in a year, right? Communities can change, economy can change, so many different things can change. So when they actually get over here to actually, with their work permits, with their family, to start the business that they've dreamed of, that they're trying to get going, it can be tough, and it can be a challenge. And if even for local people that start businesses, I think the stat still is 9 out of every 10 businesses fail in their first year. So you have to remember that a lot of businesses have trouble starting off in their first year, and that's with you being in a community already, or already knowing the industry and starting the business immediately and getting into it right away. You just imagine trying to start a business, and then a year later you just hope and pray that it's still there and it's still available. And then opportunity is still there. Nobody did it already. So I think that's part of it. So as we know, with time, things can change. So you have to keep that in mind, that it does change from time to time. And I think, when we're looking at it, right, as per I think this is the Chinese storefront one, right? 95% of the business immigrants that come into the province are Chinese. So I don't think it is just Chinese. I think it's all of them. It's just majority of the immigrants are Chinese business immigrants. We do have the best program in Canada, as well as the Yukon, which is the only ones that don't require English. So we're getting those applicants to come in. Which, if they invest in rural, it's cheaper. So it's 150,000 instead of 250,000 in the city. They get extra points for being in a rural community, which also makes it enticing. And wants people to move over to those communities. So there's a lot of attractions for businesses coming to Saskatchewan using the business program and coming into rural communities. But really, what I'm seeing, it may not be the fact that it's that they're just buying a storefront or whatnot. What community involvement is there? Who's getting them involved in the community? What's actually happening in the community? What's keeping the business alive? What are they doing in the community? Who's giving the community support, right? So there's a lot of those different aspects that, have to also be looked at before you just point the finger and say, hey, look, they started a business and failed, right? How can we help them be successful is my take on this.
Thanks,
Janine?
Dirk. Yeah, that was a question I created. I live in Rostern, and there's the whole Main Street is that. I work in economic development, so I understand why, but the community definitely does not understand. So anyways, thank you.
Sorry, long answer for a short question, but that was a pretty tricky one. There's a few things in there, so.
Yeah, for sure.
Yeah, I had a bit of a follow-up question to that too, because I've seen that in some of the communities I work at. is there merit to that, the fact that they buy those businesses just to get their permanent residency to move to the cities following that time frame they need to be there?
You know, they've made this decision that that's the easiest way and the best possible chance for them to get their permanent residence. They have to run the business for 1 year. They have to have an active role in the business for 1 year. If they don't have that, they basically don't have the opportunity to get permanent residence, because they have to remove the business establishment criteria, or I think they sign an agreement. They have to, once they've achieved that milestone, then they have the opportunity to apply for permanent. Originally, it was they just invest $75,000, they get 2 nominations, they can apply for work permit PR at the same time, and they get it. Now it's not, right? So now they made it more difficult to get permanent residence, and put some criteria in place to make sure that they actually have to go through the rigmarole, so to speak, to actually get that permanent residence. But you know, what's to stop them from actually having successful business? Who's shopping at those stores? How much do they know about those stores? You know, how many people from the community actually go into those stores? Right. I don't know the statistics on it, but you know, is there any community event that actually gets people going into these stores? Or like, you know, they need help, and I'm not sure who's helping them. Maybe they don't know where the help is. Maybe they're not getting enough. Maybe they're not asking enough questions. There's a lot to it.
Yeah, thank you for that. Janine, do you have anything to add to that question?
No, I think Dirk answered that very eloquently. Whether you did your background, and he's the expert in the programs. Again, you know, yeah, we do see stores where we've had foreign investments, and after a year, 18 months, they've closed and they've moved. And you know, that's the nature of us all. We all want to move where there's a community, and if we don't feel as though that community where we research is offering that, then you know, it's human nature that you're going to gravitate towards your community. So there's a lot that we can all do.
Definitely. I think economic development officers and newcomer centers really can play a big role in helping with that settlement. So next question. Many people don't understand the immigration process, and there is a notion that new immigrants are a drain on taxpayers. Can you please explain the time, the wait, and the financial obligations and proof of income requirements prior to immigrating?
All right. Janine, do you want to go first on this one, or?
You know, this is another loaded question. I mean, Dirk, you can talk about kind of the program requirements, I guess. But, you know, I think when we look at social assistance in general, it's there for a purpose. And I'm just going to say that. So whoever is accessing social assistance has the right to, you know, it's put there to support people when they're at the most vulnerable, whether that's they need housing or they need income, and to provide food for their families. So that was my little take there on kind of the social assistance that Canada has, and we have a fantastic social assistance program. Are we a drain on taxpayers' money? Absolutely not. And I'm just going to say that Canada depends on immigration. 2023 to 2025 is going to be the highest numbers ever. As Dirk mentioned, with the high retirement numbers, Canada needs immigrants. And so we come and we work maybe 1, 2, 3 jobs to put into the system. And so I will pass it over to Dirk now, and perhaps we can have a conversation after this.
Yeah, this one's definitely a bit of a loaded question for sure. I think you answered it very admirably, Janine. I definitely believe that foreign people that come to live and work in our province, they contribute to society, not only revenue and taxes, but also they shop at the stores. They go and support the economy. They in a lot of cases, right? So I think that's a pretty important non-drain, so to speak, right? Because they're coming in and buying things that have been for sale often for a long time. They're coming in actually making purchases. They're coming in improving places. They're spending money, right? Because they're bringing in new money that wasn't here in the first place. So anytime you're adding new money to the economy and it's being spent is a positive as I see it. As per the immigration process, I guess I can give a little bit of a short one here. Really, in Saskatchewan, there's two methods to come. There's the federal route and there's the provincial route. And the federal route for enterprises is pretty expensive because anybody who's paid as a low wage worker, so to speak, which is under $26 an hour, the employer in Canada, in Saskatchewan, has to pay $1,000 head tax for each person they're requesting. And if they're refused in the process with the federal government, they still lose that money. So if you ask for 10 people to come in and provide you, say, 176 labor units per month, and you're asking for 10 of them, that's 1,760 hours that you're going to get out of the people that you're bringing over. But it's costing you $10,000 up front just to the federal government. So they're taking a big chunk of change off of all the small and medium-sized businesses that really are driving the economy. So the fact that they're pulling that money out of these growing businesses, it's not helping the economy and it's not helping the businesses. And then so after they get the approval to hire the foreign workers through the federal program, not only do they actually have to, then they have to worry about recruiting the right people and getting people from countries that oftentimes take 12, 13, 16, 18 weeks, sometimes even longer. And then when those people finally come over, they have to pay for their flights. So they're paying for flights on top of the Service Canada fee, on top of the wait. By the time that they finally get the people here, they're so excited that people already get here. Is it on time? Did the people get here on time? Did the workers apply for the work permits on time? Are they actually getting here on time? Like there's a lot to the logistics of getting the workers that you need at the right time so you can actually make money and recoup the amount of money that you spent. Because there's a significant amount of money spent to actually obtain and retain the foreign workers you're bringing over, which not a lot of people really understand. So like, oh, well, this person just arrived here. That's great. Well, they're a burden on our taxes. Well, the employer has made a conscious decision to go and find these right people to come and work for their business. They've spent a lot of money to bring them in, and it's difficult, right? So then on the other one is the provincial program. So the provincial program, generally what happens is you apply for a job approval letter after you're registered, then the worker applies for a nomination. They get two nominations. They get one for work permit, one for PR. When they come over using this, they can apply for their permanent residence at the same time as their work permit. So that clock starts ticking towards getting their permanent residence right away, which means that they're going to get their permanent residence well before anybody that applied for an LMA and work permit gets it. And generally what I find is the longer that people have with a closed work permit they're in Canada, the higher the chance of retention is. So the longer the person lives in the community, the longer that they have the opportunity to have their family come over, their kids come over, their kids go to school, their wife gets a job. The more of those factors that come into play, the longer the people generally stay in the community. The kids make friends, it ties them to the community. So the longer that we can get people to come and stay in the communities, the better. So the express entry program gets some permanent residence right away. It's not the best for rural, but there is an opportunity for us to utilize these programs and be able to get people and keep people as long as possible. But at the same time, when the federal government makes it so easy to change and move, it really is a hindrance to the whole system in place, especially for rural. So I guess that's a little bit of a background about the different programs, because you can use different programs to bring people in. But it's also, like I always say, you have to obtain people and retain people. So you have to have retention strategies as well as obtaining the people strategies for both.
Thanks. That was really excellent explanations. And I think as a duty of all of us in this virtual room, I think it's our job to advocate for that, and that these people immigrating to our communities are, trying to make a new life and to bring quality to our communities as well. So thank you for those answers. Next question. We see a lot of families from the Philippines arriving in rural communities and move into healthcare roles. Why are healthcare roles hard to fill in rural communities with local people? And why do the professional credentials transfer over so much easier for the Filipino professionals versus other experts coming from other countries?
Janine, I'm gonna let you go first on this one here. This touches close to my heart, so I'll go last if possible.
Okay. So we'll start, I guess, with the number. I'm speaking to some of my staff actually about this, and I think last year in the Philippines there were over nearly 3,000 school leavers who enrolled in nursing, compared to, I don't know, maybe 300 in Saskatchewan. And so right there we have a number difference. Looking at, there's a new program, which I guess is where this question maybe originated out of. And so in mid-March, in the second recruitment drive over to the Philippines, there were just over 200 conditional job offers extended to registered nurses. And so we have nearly 400 Filipino RNs now committed to joining our the workforce here in Saskatchewan. But out of that number, there's around 160 that are going through the process of language acquisition. So they have to get to the language benchmark that's required. The bridging training, so they have to go through bridging training to get the RN qualification here. And of course, their licensing. So whilst it may look like, oh, Filipino nurses are arriving, they're going straight into the jobs and it must be way easier, that's not actually the case. And then again, speaking with my staff team, it's kind of, why? Filipinos are known for their caring nature. It's a country where, especially in rural, the recruitment is aggressive. We have fantastic retention. Again, I'll go back to that first question. We have a community. But let's just flip that now a little bit to looking at how many Canadian students being hired in rural. So again, I got this straight from the Ministry of Health website. And since April the 6th, SHA has hired 114 grad nurses from across Saskatchewan and Canada to rural, and a further 81 conditional job offers have been made to nursing students who were graduating in the spring. So we do have a high number of Saskatchewan and Canadian graduates who are also being offered jobs in rural. But will we retain them? Will we retain those young people? And so we need the nurses. The question asked about why is it easier? No pathway is easier. There are always, anything that's licensed, we have to go through licensing. The language requirements have to be there. The bridging education has to be there. So it is a time-consuming program. It's just that we know recruitment from the Philippines in rural communities is a positive outcome. We know that we retain. So, Dirk, I made mine short and sweet, so I remember you said you had a lot to say on this one.
No, honestly, I think you did great. You definitely touched on the fact that it's not easy for anybody anywhere, and I think that's important. So, I guess what our software does is it makes it easy and simple for people to track the entire process from A to Z. We don't do immigration. We're like the Uber for immigration. So we're a little bit different that way, where we have all the immigration consultants are like drivers, and we match the right person up with the right driver to, get them to the finish line, so to speak. So, we are looking at getting into the nursing stuff. So I am a little bit aware that the Saskatchewan government is doing a really good job in and have made some great strides in cutting the red tape for the lengthy process for credential assessments. They're making a quick and easy version of it, which we're hopefully we'll see soon that it's going to be able to really take effect and go and help us out in a big way. Well, what a lot of people don't understand is how difficult it is to obtain and retain and attract these nurses to Saskatchewan. Not only is Saskatchewan looking for nurses, so is Manitoba, so is Alberta, so is BC, so is the rest of Canada. Not only that, but the United States is going after these exact same nurses. Germany's offering free education to their entire family members, all the way to master's doctorate for any of the family members if they go there. Ireland's after the same nurses, Netherlands, UK, Australia, everybody's after these same nurses. So the fact that we've given 400 conditional offers to these nurses that have considered Saskatchewan, that's fantastic. Will they all accept? Will they all get approved through English, through credential assessment, through the nursing? Will they actually arrive? Probably not all of them. We got to keep filling the funnel. And that's part of it. So I guess from an international recruiting standpoint, it's very competitive. And the fact that we're looking at the Philippines, I think the reason is that number one, they speak English. Number two, we have communities of Filipino peoples. They actually have a community of other people to reach out to and create those relationships in rural communities. So I think that's really important. So I don't think it's any easier anywhere. Some education systems are a little bit different and, I don't want to say better, but different. So it can make it a little bit easier. Is it the Philippines? I wouldn't say that's the case. Do they have schools dedicated to just training nurses and they have an overabundance? Yes. Are the nurses required to work in the Philippines before going international? Yes. So they have to work there first before they come over. So there is there's a lot of nurses, but everybody's after them. So that's a big one there. So and I think the reason why a lot of people are moving from these rural towns into the cities is just specifically to supply and demand. When you have a ton of nursing jobs open and a ton of great positions open, highly desirable positions open in like Saskatoon and Regina and the major city centers, it's a natural that kids and people in rural communities flock to the city centers. I'm a perfect example, being born and raised in Yorkton and bringing my family to Saskatoon and raising my family here. Not everybody wants to stay in that rural small city. They're okay if there's an opportunity to go to the bigger city, they will. Once those positions in the city centers are filled, though, the next best scenario will be those rural communities. So how soon can we, saturate the city markets and, essentially force the hand of the rural markets? I don't know. That's a story to remain to be seen. But I think that's really where a lot of this comes down to, is that, once those main positions are filled, then trickle down effect will be to the rural communities, and then it'll eventually get to the furthest rural communities. Or there's got to be some sort of serious incentive to get people to go to those and stay in those rural communities, which I think that they have those in place. Somebody might correct me on that, but I think the province has some incentives for people to stay rural. But yeah, that'd be my 2 cents on this.
Thanks. I think that just goes back to the settlement and retention conversation around, if people are moving or immigrating to your smaller communities, you can keep them there if you give them the right settlement experience. Which goes to the next question, that most communities consider themselves very welcoming, especially small towns. Smiling and waving on its own is not enough, often not enough. Newcomers want friendships, companionship, etc. Any suggestions on best practices in this area?
I guess living and landing in a small community and working in a small community, I'll go first. I'll just go back to what Dirk was saying, though, about quite often seeing the jobs in the larger centres, and I was nearly guilty of that. But if it hadn't have been for my kids settling in school and making friends, then yeah, I definitely would have done that, because I go back to that welcoming community. And you know, we can all say, oh yeah, well, our community checks, we have the, what was it, 14 identifiers of a welcoming community. Yeah, we check those. We have leisure, we have schools, we have places. Like, we'll put that on our website and call ourselves a welcoming community. But it goes deeper than that, much deeper. Actually, we were at a conference not long ago, and there's a new document out, Victoria. I'm just going to get her name here so I can quote her. Victoria Essay from Pathways to Prosperity. They've developed a new welcoming community toolkit, which I do encourage any of you to access. And there's 3 clusters in there. So I think what we need to be looking at is how impactful is our community when it comes to welcoming any immigrant from any culture, from any country, from any religion. What do we have in there? And we need to identify, when we're looking at those clusters in the package, which ones do we feel are a priority, and how can we measure them? You know, what can we compare them to? Do we compare them to the immigrants that are just landing now to immigrants 10 years ago? Do we compare what we're going to say is our goal to the immigrants that are landing now to Canadian born? We have to have some comparables there. But yeah, when you arrive, it's kind of like being in a goldfish bowl. Everybody wants to know you. Everybody's waving, like you say, Lindsay, and saying hi, and it's great. But the longer you are here, the more a person, and we do some research through our local immigration partnership, people are looking at, what is it that I miss? Not what is it that I need, what is it that I miss? And a lot of that goes down to recreation, it goes down to community events, and it goes down to inclusivity. Music and dancing is a big thing of most immigrants from our countries. We're loud, we like street events, and so having those ongoing, and really the host community has to be the one that makes that first move, not the immigrant going to the host community. And once that move is made, you feel like, okay, yeah, this community does want me here. We also look at, what is a community? Is it just where we live, or is it the region? Because things can happen outside of your own community that still make you feel welcome. You know, we may live in Ingleside, Saskatchewan, but that doesn't mean, oh, everything that I do has to happen in Ingleside. It may be, oh, I feel Leroy is only 20 minutes away. Humboldt is only 15 minutes away. I feel welcome within that region. I have a community within that region. So there's many things that do make up a welcoming community. But it takes a lot of work. It has to be measurable. We have to keep revisiting it. What impacts have we made by, and having those goals, developing the policies, even at a city level and RM level, is to develop a committee, a welcoming community committee, who will really work with immigrants and invites immigrants to have their voice on those tables. So there's many things that make up welcoming communities.
Well, that was well said. Not much more I can add on that, other than the fact that I think that small communities, you know, you kind of get in a habit, right? Everybody knows everybody. It's kind of a clique. Everybody has their own little cliques in the communities, and it's kind of that niche that way, right? So it really, who wants to open up their doors? Who wants to invite people over for dinner? Who wants to, you know, share that cultural exchange, right? It's, you know, like it mentions here, smiling and waving is great, but like, breaking bread, that's a true sign of actually, bringing somebody into your home, inviting them in. That goes a long way. I know for myself, I lived and traveled around the world, and the first year, it goes through a phase. The first phase is like, it's like the honeymoon phase, like, ooh, everything's great, this is awesome, this is fantastic, wow, wow, wow. And then you start thinking about all your friends and family back home, because they're telling you all the stories that they're having. And it's like, oh, I miss that, I miss that, I miss that. And it kind of gets into that, around 8, 9, 10 months down the road, you're kind of like in a little bit of a funk, and you're like, oh. So I think that's the traditional way of a person getting into a different community. So how can we kind of curb that? Are there any community dinners? Are there any community things? Is anybody inviting them to the curling rink to go curling, or inviting them to a team? How are we getting them immersed in the community? Like, have they ever tried curling? It's just about every community does it, right? Anybody can really do it. Little things like that, maybe card nights. Maybe there's a game night, I don't know, but like those, it's the little things that go a long way with newcomers, because even the smallest gesture can make the biggest difference in somebody's life.
Yeah. I think that's great, Dirk. Another thing I do want to point out as well is, in our conversations that we have with our clients, quite often, we've been asked so many times, like, what is it that you would like? What is it that you miss? What can we do to make our communities more inviting? And they don't actually see the outcomes. And so the questions have been asked, the data's been given, but yet nothing is, there's no outcome after it. And I think that's a really big thing to take into consideration. And I'll give you a great example. We have a fantastic adult basketball league now in our community. And when I say community, we have teams coming from Porcupine playing every single Sunday to play basketball in Humboldt. That's a welcoming community. However, we've had to stop it through the summer because there is no full-size basketball court in our community. And that's something that our Filipino community have been voicing for many, many years. And so, you look at very tangible things like that could be implemented to make a community more welcoming. I'll add that in there, because there are things that are very deep rooted in our cultures that once they're taken away from, it's hard to retain, and then you may move to a larger center just because of that.
Yeah, thanks for those answers.
Yeah.
Next question, last one before we close this up. But in some rural communities, we see church-sponsored families moving to small communities, and they receive a lot of love and support from the church. Rental homes become available, jobs become available, and there is a committee of people who provide all necessities of life for this transition. However, in other instances, we also see Indigenous and non-Indigenous peoples who are fleeing war from family violence and struggle to find a safe and affordable home in rural communities. And there may be some resistance to the new Canadian versus old Canadian. Do you have any experiences or best practices that we could draw on to prevent this type of reception? Another hard one for you.
Yeah, this one is a deep one. I couldn't even write this one out. There is church immigration. So when there's a group of people, they are able to sponsor. So I think that's part of it. I think that there is, church provides some sort of a community automatically for people that are coming in. I can't speak to it, so I'm not in that bucket, so to speak. But as per, Indigenous and non-Indigenous people fleeing from family violence, I think that's everywhere in the world. So I think that everybody's kind of in the same boat. I like to paint everybody with the same brush. We're all people, and everybody has different things that they have to overcome and different issues that they have to deal with. So as per new and old Canadian, it's tough. You know, I'm a second or third generation Canadian. You know, don't see a lot of benefits as being a native of the province, staying in the province. There's not a lot of benefits to it. There's benefits for the Aboriginal peoples. There's benefits for the newcomers that are coming. But when I go to try to get French classes, I can't get French classes for free, but everyone else can. It just seems a little strange when, you know, we're trying to pump the, you know, French everywhere. And then, you know, I'm trying to take French so that I keep up with my kids, and I can't get French classes. So it's pretty strange that kind of stuff comes in. So, you know, I'm sure Janine can speak much greater to this one here. But I think people are people, no matter what they're going through. We should be supporting everybody, no matter what, you know, race or color or gender or anything. Everybody should be treated equally at all times. And I think that if we do that and we practice that, preach that, and we treat everybody equally like that, I think that kind of solves the problem on its own.
Thanks. Yeah, great words, Dirk. I guess I can speak to this a little bit from a personal level, and also from a settlement perspective as well. As Dirk mentioned, there is a pathway for church groups. There's also a pathway for refugees. So I am on Refugee Coalition, and we sponsor families to come to our community, and we're responsible to fundraise, to provide housing, to provide settlement for that family for a particular length of time. So yes, we do have to find housing and make sure that the rent is paid for a particular length of time for that particular family. I think maybe the lens on this one was the arrival of Ukrainian families who were fleeing the war and came over on what was known as Q8 visas. So they were given visas to work, open work permits, and also to get to Canada quickly. So yeah, what did happen in many of our rural communities, and we certainly observed this, were that churches or response groups, response committees were developed, and people, yeah, they made housing available for those families who were fleeing war. That is not to undermine families in our province who are fleeing domestic violence, fleeing personal family violence. Both groups are marginalized and both groups are disadvantaged. And shelter, food and water and safety is a basic human right, and I'm not denying that at all. And so perhaps on here we should have staff housing. There's many factors in this, you know, it's a loaded question, and it's something that's very close to my heart. I think we should have equitable housing for everybody. And when I say housing, affordable housing, we shouldn't just be looking at that third of our gross income. We need to take other factors into consideration, and we do need to ensure that housing is not only affordable, but it's adequate, that people are not being overcrowded, which is something we do see for our newcomer families. Housing, wherever you are, is inflated, rental prices. There is a housing shortage, and therefore housing is overcrowded quite often. I think what we need to all remember, regardless of where we're coming from, is that we do all hold privilege. Some of us have more privilege than others. But regardless of where we're coming from, whether we are Indigenous to our land, whether we're refugees fleeing war, whether we're fleeing family violence, whatever privilege we have, we should be using. to help somebody else. So yeah, if we can pass this question on to Sask Housing, I would love to be on a plenary with them. Because I think there's a lot that we can be doing to utilize the vacant properties to others that don't have children, but who are in need of housing. So
Thank you, you guys. That was excellent. What I'm taking from that is that no matter if it's a church group or any organization within your community, it does definitely take a little bit more of an intentional group to help settle any person of any culture or descendant. So I think that was a really good takeaway that you guys both provided. And in closing, we would appreciate any further insight that you may have on improving immigration continuum in rural Saskatchewan from the perspective of the community and employers, as well as newcomers. So any last words you guys want to share as community leaders kind of take this information and move it to efforts towards, you know, growing their communities or helping settlement, helping settle new Canadians?
Yeah.
Go ahead, Janine.
I've worked in this sector for many years. It was not my background before coming to Canada. It's a whole new life for me, but it's a journey that I'm glad I've traveled and I've met some amazing people as I've made the journey. But I think when we're looking at employment, when we're looking at this pension, we need to understand that we have networks and that we're not kind of on our own little islands. So employers need to engage with welcome centres such as ours so that they understand that we're there not only to support their new employees, but we're also there to support them, that we can provide programs for them to look at culture in the workplace, cross-cultural training in the workplace. We can provide training when it comes to anti-racism in the workplace, and what does that look like? We can provide opportunities for them to engage in community events where they can perhaps sponsor and celebrate the workforce. So I think we can work with our family services so that, again, we can provide our expertise on settlement and cultural awareness when it comes to accessing mental health and counselling to do with domestic violence. So there's many, many nuances when it comes to settlement. We're not just here to help people get their SIN number and their health card and look for employment. Our umbrella is vast, and we hope to be able to share our expertise. Now we've gone from a staff of 1 to a staff of 8. So we do have a lot of knowledge and not a lot of cultural awareness within our workspace. So I'd like to pass that on to the sector.
Yeah, so from my experience, I've been in the immigration industry since 2006. So I'm an old dog in this, to the point where I don't want to be doing immigration anymore. I want to do software, which is where I did the shift. But really what it boils down to is what I preach every day is you have to have a plan to obtain people and you have to have a plan to retain people. And the number one thing that I see that once you have people coming is the business really needs to understand that they need to communicate with the workers when they land, communicate with them frequently, and often at times to retain the people. They need to know that there's a path for them to get what they want in the end. Like, they're not just here to come and work. They're here to work and also generally get permanent residence, or bring their spouse here to get an open work permit, or get their kids here, or get their kids in school. There's normally an ulterior motive to what they want and why they're here. And as an employer, if you want to really retain those people, especially in a rural community, find out what their goal is and see how you can help them get it. And if they're a great employee, they're going to be coming and they're going to be, bringing a new life into your business. They're going to be bringing a new energy into that business of excitement about the fact that they've made it. They hit their goal. They're living their dream. And it's contagious. Success is contagious. And it rubs off into a community, and it rubs off into the workplace. So, but knowing that now spouses can often get open work permits, and kids can get work permits, and kids can get study permits. How can your business or the community get the spouse a job? How is it to get the kid into school, immerse them into it, potentially get them a summer job? What are those things that you can do to really retain the people? And if you focus on their retention and really guiding them to, hey, we'll help you get what you want in the end, just stick with us, the retention's going to be there. So I think, you know, picking people, you got to really be selective on who you pick and be picky, because there's a lot of people there and they're going to tell you what you want to hear. So, and when you're interviewing, ask specific questions that are only a person that can do the job could answer, to make sure that you actually are getting the right person. Have a video call. Don't just have a phone call. And lastly, like I said, just communicate with them. I know it sounds easy, but it's one of the things that people forget in a busy work life. When you're a business owner working 59 hours a week, you can forget about these types of things, but it's the little things that make the biggest difference.
Awesome. Well, I want to thank you two very much for sharing your expertise in this area. I know that I'm very excited. I've been working in this kind of or diving into the immigration world a little bit more in the last year or two. So I'm excited to have great new contacts like yourselves. So with that, I think we only had this set out to 11. So I don't know.
I just wanted, there's just a few questions. If we could just quickly, I'll just go through them.
Some rapid
but
fire.
If you have to go, that's understandable. The one is, would a reason for hiring outside of Canada for healthcare positions be due to the lack of seats offered in Canadian universities? Sorry, it's kind of cutting out. Anyways, if you could answer that part, that would be super.
I think it comes down to supply and demand. I think that we have more jobs than we have people graduating. If we keep pumping out students in seats, will it help? Yes. I also believe that there's a shorter lifespan of people in the healthcare industry. They generally don't work. They generally come out of school around 28-ish, 25 to 28. Generally only work until 45 to 55, whereas other industries are longer. So there is that life expectancy. Plus, the fact is that there's just too many jobs available right now.
Yeah. Another question is, this is a really important aspect of community economic development. Sometimes communities leaders struggle to understand
the importance of community development.
Thank you. Sorry, I don't know why I can't see that clearly.
In overall economic development objectives. I think that was just a statement.
Yeah. Okay.
How important that was. And then I was just going to ask you, Lan, if you wanted to elaborate on your comment that you put in here, that 71% of Saskatchewan immigrants are economic immigrants compared to 54% of Canadian immigrants that are economic.
Well, that kind of went back to that. I think it was the second question, where there's some folks have a perception that immigrants are a bit of a drain or on, I guess, on our social services and stuff. So I think some of that narrative maybe comes, it's maybe not applicable to our Saskatchewan immigrants so much, because most of them are economic immigrants. I think particularly in Western Canada, most of our immigrants are economic immigrants, which means they've come here to work. So it's different than when you start looking at some of the other classes, like our refugee class and stuff.
Thanks, Elan.
I just wanted to make a comment too. I really appreciated the fact that, people really just need to understand that, people are coming here, they're choosing Canada, they're choosing Saskatchewan #1, and it is very competitive. And that's really a point that we need to promote, because if people are not having a good experience, they will leave, and they are really contributing to our economy, urban or rural. And I worked for the Canadian Embassy in Beijing, and I saw the process firsthand, what it looked like for people to be coming over. And I created all these questions, and I'm glad they were super challenging. That was fun. So anyways, I just want to say thank you very much for participating. I think it was a great discussion, and I really feel that it opened up some, really the premise, and to just really understand that it's not about necessarily, it's about retraining people to be less discriminatory towards people who are coming in, because they are choosing to be there. So like, be nice and give people opportunities, or they will leave. And I mean, it needs to be people need to start changing the way they're thinking about people from other countries coming. They're not taking away jobs. They are just helping our economy grow and introduce new people into the labor and communities. And it's wonderful. So
also, I
thank
just
you.
want to throw in here, like, everybody deserves a pat on the back. I've been doing this a long time, and it has gotten better. And it is continually getting better. So what we are doing, just don't lose sight of the fact that every little bit counts, and everything that everybody's been doing, and especially the newcomer centers, like they're getting bigger and they're getting better, and it's not going to happen overnight. So we just got to keep at it, and the longer we do it, the better we get at it, and it's going to just keep getting better.
Mm-hmm. Wonderful.
Thanks, everyone. That was excellent.
Thank you. And on behalf of SEDA, Verona was unable to make it today, but I know that she really appreciates all the feedback and everyone attending today. And we have another session coming up next week, so be sure to check out the upcoming webinars on SEDA's website.
Yeah, thank you very much. Have a
Thank
good day.
you.
See ya.
Thank
Bye.
you.
Thanks, everyone. Thanks, Jess.
Thank you. That's great.
Good.
Yeah.
Sorry, I didn't realize there was no presentations. My bad about that.
Oh gosh, no, and I didn't even think to say that. So I'm just going.
And then I read the question